The Untrustworthy Speaker by Louise Gluck. Don't listen to me. My heart's been broken. I don't see anything objectively. I know myself. I've learned to hear like a psychiatrist. When I speak passionately, that's when I'm least to be trusted. It's very sad, really. All my life I've been praised for my intelligence, my powers of language, of insight. In the end, they're wasted. I never see myself standing on the front steps holding my sister's hand. That's why I can't account for the bruises on her arm where the sleeve ends. In my own mind, I'm invisible. That's why I'm dangerous. People like me, who seem selfless, we're the cripples, the liars. We're the ones who should be factored out in the interest of truth. When I'm quiet, that's when the truth emerges. A clear sky, the clouds like white fibers. Underneath a little gray house, the azaleas red and bright pink. If you want the truth, you have to close yourself to the older daughter, block her out. When a living thing is hurt like that, in its deepest workings, all function is altered. That's why I'm not to be trusted, because a wound to the heart is also a wound to the mind.
Wow.
That was a poem.
That was a poem. That's what I was going to say.
Of course.
At some point during that poem, I was like, when this poem ends, I'm going to go, that was a poem. So I'm Phil. This is Sarah.
We're at Sugar House Park. I'm actually going to facilitate a writing circle here in a couple minutes. And we're also here to facilitate a bit of a writing circle with you guys.
Nice segue. We are, for those who don't know, Own It SLC. We put on shows, live shows, mostly for people in and for recovery, but not necessarily. We've been doing that for a while, and then we decided we want to come in there and do something kind of similar. So we got with Cheryl, who is a director of sorts over there, and we're like, hey, we want to come in and share some stuff with your peeps. And she's like, cool. And so we figured it out, and it had to be over video because Zoom. Or Zoom. Yeah, Zoom it'll be Zoom, but this video obviously isn't. Anyways, we make a video and we do something like a poem, or we read a story, or we say, hey, this is our experience, and then we go, hey, you guys want to write something? So we thought today we would have you guys write a poem. What is a poem anyways? Sarah?
A poem is highly concentrated language. So in a poem, every word earns its place. And so you take what could be quite a long story and you distill it down into a couple of lines, images, phrases, emotions. Poem is kind of like the abstract of what happened. And one thing that I really love about poetry is that it allows me to explore a feeling or an experience in a way that doesn't exactly have to make sense. So a lot of times when I write poetry, I am not really quite sure what I'm saying, and I'm kind of almost like listening for the music. And we recorded a podcast just this last week where we interviewed a rapper, and he was talking about how he started out as a poet and was at a party, and his buddy was freestyling, and so he kind of transitioned because he was inspired by what his buddy was doing, so transitioned from poet to rapper. You know anything about that, Phil?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote poems for a long time before I started rapping, and then when I was clear back in 1999, when I was a senior in high school, senior. One of my teachers, one of the challenges for the class was to write a song, and I'd never written a song. I'd freestyled a lot, but I hadn't ever written like an actual verse, and so I wrote kind of a poem-y verse and then spit it over a beat. So,
It's pretty cool. We put that on our podcast too.
oh yeah, yeah.
I could barely even recognize your voice.
Yeah, it's weird how well, at least when I first started out, you kind of have to, I had to like kind of try in a way because I hadn't ever done it, and it's a practice like anything. And it's taken me almost 20 years to get to a place where if you hear me on a track, it sounds almost exactly how I sound in real life. But back then it was like, you're trying to find the wordplay and rhyme a bunch of words, and way more poemy back then. Now it's more, I'd say it's more straightforward, but you'll hear some poetry in there, which I like, But yeah, poems are cool, and they can be irritating because like you don't know what the hell they're talking about sometimes, and you kind of, or at least personally, I like literal language because I can understand what it's saying. But poems are cool, man. You consider yourself a poet, don't you?
Yeah. I mean, it's evolved. My writing has definitely evolved over the last. How old am I?
43 in a couple weeks, ain't you?
Yeah. So over the last 30 years, I mean, I've been writing for 30 years, so it changes depending on who I'm reading and what I'm going through. Sometimes I want something a little bit more straightforward, and sometimes poetry is the only way that I can really get close to what I'm experiencing, because I don't even quite understand it myself. So I
think you hit on something pretty important. Like a poem can allow you to kind of be wishy-washy in what you're like slogging around and what you're thinking, whereas like technical writing or like if you're writing to communicate directly, you can't really do that. So I like that about poetry, because you can kind of hide in there when you don't want to be like out in the open.
Yeah.
You know.
So I'm gonna read this poem one more time, actually, because it's really hard to. A poem is kind of like a dream. It's hard to catch it. So we're gonna go back through it again, and maybe you'll hear some different stuff. But this poem, where you can think of this poem kind of like as a prompt. The prompt is, I like to call it the entry into your own writing. So it's kind of like opening a door, if you like it. I like to listen to a poem with a pen in my hand, and whatever line jumps out at me, and I don't have to even know why it jumped out at me, but just when it jumps, I write it down, catch it, write it down real quick, and see where it goes. This is a really good way to get in touch with intuition. So intuitively listen, and then you don't really, I mean, the intuition doesn't explain itself. It's just kind of like this gut thing, you know? So here again is The Untrustworthy Speaker by Louise Gluck. Don't listen to me. My heart's been broken. I don't see anything objectively. I know myself. I've learned to hear like a psychiatrist. When I speak passionately, that's when I'm least to be trusted. It's very sad, really. All my life I've been praised for my intelligence, my powers of language, of insight. In the end, they're wasted. I never see myself standing on the front steps holding my sister's hand. That's why I can't account for the bruises on her arm where the sleeve ends. In my own mind, I'm invisible. That's why I'm dangerous. People like me who seem selfless, we're the cripples, the liars. We're the ones who should be factored out in the interest of truth. When I'm quiet, that's when the truth emerges. A clear sky, the clouds like white fibers. Underneath a little gray house, the azaleas red and bright pink. If you want the truth, you have to close yourself to the oldest daughter, block her out. When a living thing is hurt like that, in its deepest workings, all function is altered. That's why I'm not to be trusted, because a wound to the heart is also a wound to the mind.
That was a poem.
That was a poem. Now you get to write one.
Yeah, so the idea is you watch this video, and then the facilitator, whoever that be, on whatever Friday you are, will give you a a little bit of time to write your own poem, and then on your Friday you will present, if you wish, to us and to the rest of the group.
One thing I want to say
Yes.
about that. Please don't let the fact that you'll be invited to read this poem out loud get into your head too much. Write the poem that needs to be written from you first, and then you can decide in the moment if it's something that you feel like sharing. It's far more important that you write for yourself first. If I consider my audience too much, I second guess everything and I can't write down anything, and I'm worried about, you know, what people are gonna think or if I might be misunderstood. So just write, and then when we see you on Friday, you can intuitively decide if you would like to read or not.
There you go.
Yeah.
Thanks for stopping by. We'll see you soon.